This channel is part of the History Hit network. Stick around to find out more.
In 1990, someone flew over this Worcestershire field and took this aerial photograph. You can see all these extraordinary crop marks that aren't visible from the ground. But what are they? Well, we've got two clues. A couple of fields in this direction, archaeologists have discovered vast amounts of pottery and evidence of houses and deep pits, all of it Bronze Age, and in such large amounts it's considered to be of national importance. But over here is Breedon Hill, one of the largest Iron Age hill forts in the whole country. So what's going on here? Local archaeologists have called us in to sort it all out in just 3 days. Presumably this is the field with the crop marks in.
Yeah, these have been plotted from air pictures onto the map here. This field here is ploughed, but we don't know what's in that at all. And these fields here have been quarried and produced a whole mass of finds.
This is the one with the thousands of Bronze Age sherds?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some of this, Tony. The size of the bits that are coming out.
Looks like dog biscuit, doesn't it?
That is quite amazing, Tony. And I mean, pottery of that age and that condition, I mean, normally just falls to bits. That's a major collection.
Yeah. So what are we going to do?
We can field walk this, because this is ploughed and harrowed, so we can do a field walking exercise across that, and you never know what's going to turn up there. And then in this field here, we need some geophysics done, but this is where we want to do some evaluation trenches as well.
We've got four main classes of features, these smaller blobs, which may be pits. But
these things here?
That's right. But the main features are these series of earthwork features, rectangular enclosure here, more irregular enclosures, and then these long linear features. So it would seem that perhaps the most cost-effective way of dealing with that would be to put one trench through part of this rectangular feature, cutting through the irregular, so we get the relationship between
You really want to go across somewhere like that, don't you, where you're going to hit
and
two
go
or
on
three
into
things.
the middle as well, presumably.
Yeah.
What about something over this area,
Yeah.
perhaps across this?
I think through this area, I mean, we've got a whole mass of
They do look a bit
features
different,
here.
don't they?
You really
Yeah.
maximise your features in there.
Yeah.
This green field is the one with the crop marks in it. One of the biggest problems we're going to have this week is interpreting these lines. Could this be a building? Or is it a ditch surrounding a settlement? Are these rubbish pits? And might this be some type of trackway? Trench 1 is going in here. We're trying to put it across this crop mark. Is this edge the side of a building or a field boundary? Our first job is to find the crop marks using the aerial photograph.
History Hit is like Netflix, just for history fans. With exclusive history documentaries covering some of the most famous people and events in history, just for you. Our extensive catalogue of documentaries covers everything from the rise of Hannibal Barca to the illustrious treasures of King Tut. So sign up today for broadcast quality documentaries uncovering the mysteries of the ancient world. We're committed to bringing history fans award-winning documentaries and podcasts that you cannot find anywhere else. Sign up now for a free trial, and Odyssey fans get 50% off their first 3 months. Just be sure to use the code Odyssey at checkout.
What about nearly 50 metres really to catch the other, to get into the enclosure. And that's 100 metres. We can see 100 metres.
It involves doing a few sums.
It's 56 millimetres.
Right.
So,
So
50 metres is going to be
28
millimetres.
So I'll tell you what you need. You need to
40.
come 15 metres in and then 30 metre long trench.
Yeah.
Don't you? That'll do it.
I'll do it, yeah.
Yeah, let's do
Yeah,
that.
because we can always,
Okay, so can we
Yep.
do that?
we can.
We get underway laying out
What's that,
trench
15?
1.
That's 15, yes.
Just let them get a right angle and we'll be with you.
Okay.
Victor's already at work trying to reconstruct what this area might have looked like in the Bronze Age. But we have a problem.
Right, now that I think is the basic Bronze Age landscape. Now the next thing we got to do is move forward in time to the Iron Age and Roman period.
We're dealing with numerous periods here, but certainly the Bronze Age from 2000 to 500 BC and the Iron Age from 500 BC till the Romans arrived. Sorting out dating will be a bit of a nightmare. We know we've got Iron Age over here and Bronze Age over there, but what's the difference between the two of them?
Time, in a nutshell. The Bronze Age is a lot earlier, so the Bronze Age starts about 2000 BC and ends about 500 BC, so it's 1500 years, it's a long time. And then the Iron Age takes over after that, and it ends with the Romans coming.
And what were the differences in people's lives during the two periods?
The main difference was population and numbers of people. In the Bronze Age, people were beginning to farm the landscape intensively. I mean, people are moaning about that nowadays. Modern farmers are always tearing out hedges and things. That's what they were starting to do in the Bronze Age. They were dividing the landscape up, and they were getting a lot of food out of that landscape. And then in the Iron Age, the population of people grew and grew and grew, and you had to farm more intensively to feed them. And that meant you introduced mixed farming, because you can feed many more people if you give them wheat and barley and cereals, and not just meat.
So what might we find that's typically Bronze Age and what might we find that's typically Iron Age?
What I'd like to find, because it'll prove my theory is correct, is the Bronze Age is going to be more livestock, cattle and sheep based, the farming. And in the Iron Age, I'd like to see cattle and sheep and pigs, but also a lot of wheat and barley.
Having done our sums, we now have Trench 1 open. A little further along the main field, we're also opening Trench 2 over the crop marks.
Now all of you have got a little bag there, and we're going to walk up and down these squares.
Meanwhile, in the field next door, some of the local school kids are helping us out.
You can bring it back to me, and then I will show it to the person who looks at the finds.
We're field walking as much of the land around here as we can. We're looking for a concentration of material across any period which might give us some targets. We're hoping for Bronze or Iron Age stuff. But back on the main part of our site, I have a question for Mick. What is a crop mark, Mick?
Well, it's a mark you see from the air in the crops that might or might not indicate archaeology, but I can show you best with the diagram. If we take a surface of the ground and we've got a big pit dug into it, and let's say this is limestone or gravel or some well-drained soil like that, then this is full of gunge and filled up with soil and all the rest of it. When you put a crop over the top of that, what tends to happen is that crop will grow, but where it grows over that ditch, it'll be very much taller because it's drawing on a greater depth of plant nutrients to give a richer crop. And then when it ripens, this bit of the crop will stay greener longer than the rest when it's ripening because it's drawing from a greater depth of moisture and so on in the ditch. And so if you happen to be flying over at the right time and the crop happens to be registering that effect, then you'll see these dark lines from the air.
So all crop marks will tend to be from old ditches?
Well, there might be post holes and other features, anything that gives you a depth like that. And of course you can get the opposite effect, which is if you've got, for example, a Roman villa or a Roman road, and so you've got stonework in the soil, then the crop growing in the field there will be stunted.
Will be smaller, yeah.
Yeah, be stunted over as it grows over that stonework, and then when it's ripening, that bit of the crop will wither and go yellow before the rest of the crop. So you might see, white lines in your crop, or light lines.
The lower half of your face looks like that, actually. Down the road, half a mile away at a sewage works, there's another crop mark that interests us. These are sewage tanks. But what are these lines? Why do we want to look at this when it's so far away from the rest of the site?
Well, essentially it's a trackway, which was for getting animals and people probably from an area of farms over there,
Yeah.
along the edge of the river towards the site that we're going to be working on. So, I mean, they may be closely connected. It may be the same people using it.
And now that John's finished the geophys, which of course will be fantastic, what are we likely to find underneath the ground?
Ditches. We're going to find houses, I hope. I don't know, I keep my fingers crossed. Pits, all sorts.
Well, we've got all those.
And more!
You've summed it up.
What have we got?
So there's the sewage tanks, there's the curving trackway, and here's this enclosure
Well, let's
with
see it on
pits
yours.
inside. And that's how the magnetic results fit. There's that enclosure, the curving track. We've got a series of pits, but what's more exciting is this anomaly here, which, well, could it be a house? Could it be a barrow?
How big across is that?
That's about 10, 15 metres across.
That'd be big and nice size for a house, wouldn't
Spot on for a house.
So is this a house? We certainly think that this may be a trackway, but can we date either of them? We get digging and open our third trench. As we dig, Victor is drawing a trackway, so we can have some idea about how it might have looked in the Bronze Age.
The other trench we're onto this yellow gravel.
Is that right?
Yeah, similar sort of stuff, yeah. I gather you've had a find as well.
Word travels fast, isn't it? Look at that.
Oh, dear me.
Oh, what? You mean dear me?
Dear
Don't
me.
you dear me?
That's
You know
good,
what that
isn't it?
is, though, don't you?
Yeah, it's the end of hand axe, isn't it?
That is.
Yeah.
I mean, well, you can imagine. I feel pretty chuffed about that. You don't
Really? You do surprise
yeah, but look, you don't get many hand axes round here, do you?
Well, you do now.
And I mean, let's be honest.
It's called the Harding
Look,
factor.
Isn't this the oldest man-made implement we've ever found?
So
And here it was, just lying on the topsoil.
Yeah. You presumably look for the rest of it.
Oh, what? If I can find the rest of it.
This piece of flint is the oldest man-made item we've ever found on Time Team. It shows that people were here well before the Bronze Age. Victor has finished drawing his trackway, and Francis is able to give me an idea of what it might have been like.
You can see on the edge, you've got a ditch marking one side, and then a hedge, which has been laid along the very outside of the thing. And that was to stop the animals from getting off the trackway. So they're walking down the middle, and you can see there's a dog driving the sheep. There's another ditch and another hedge on the outside. Right, now that's what it would have looked like in the Bronze Age. This is what trackways would have looked like after a few hundred years, maybe by the Iron Age. This one, I mean, it's as good an exact parallel for a Bronze Age trackway as I can think. This one's actually running down to the river, but you've got ditches on the side. There's one down here. It's got a bit shallow now. It would originally have been much deeper, and it's still holding water. And then instead of a laid hedge, we have a fence on the side, but basically the point's to keep the animals in.
So who would have made the decision to create this?
The decisions would probably be made by sort of council of maybe 5 or 6 top farmers in the area, and maybe one big man, you know, calling the shots. But whoever made those decisions made them in consultation with other people, because this landscape isn't laid out piecemeal. It's not one man and his dog fetching some livestock down to the river. It's a carefully organised landscape.
So although trackways like this look pretty idyllic to us today, there's actually local politics at work.
Local politics, and this is a working landscape.
It's 4:30 day one. Not a lot seems to have actually happened on the ground, except we've trampled a few baby turnips. Except now I hear there's a bit of excitement. What's going on?
Well, we've done the geophysics now, and I mean, we're getting some really clear results. What we've now got is the enclosure ditch here, coming down quite clearly. There's a large pit showing on the aerial photograph. But the confusing thing is, this curving ditch now appears to be straight on the geophysics.
So what does that mean in terms of our trenches?
Well, what we were actually talking about when you arrived was we think the way to tackle this is actually to open up an area
because what we really want to know is how all these ditches relate to each other, whether they're the same date, which one's intercut with which, and get a look at some of this settlement.
I think it really is the only way to understand sites of this type.
But we're looking at area 20 metres by 40 metres at
So
the
we
moment.
need to get on
We
with it.
need to get on with it if it's going to be feasible.
I think we should do that. You can target that over your pit, over the ditches and over that internal area, can't you?
Yeah. And
40 by 20.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll find the army of volunteers.
Nick, you always say to me, we ought to dig very carefully little trenches because archaeology is like any other part of the environment that once you bring it to the surface you kill it.
Yeah.
And now they're saying 20 by 40. That's the absolute opposite of what you always nag me about.
Yeah, but the problem we have with a type of site like this, and it's true of a lot of British archaeology actually, is that an awful lot of the structures were built in wood. So it's not as if you've got a huge, great, Egyptian temple or big Roman structure. This is all basically stains in the soil. So we think that if we open a big area up, strip it back, clean it, we won't actually have a very complicated picture there. And it is the way to deal with a site like this, because there's not going to be any big stone walls or anything like that there.
So other archaeologists looking in won't say that Mick Aston practices extremely bad archaeology.
Oh, they might say that.
They do anyway, don't they?
They do anyway, yeah.
So we begin to open this big trench. This will be our fourth trench of the day. It'll cover an enormous area and hopefully give us a clearer picture of what was going on here. And maybe we'll get a date. Down at Trench 3, they've been digging furiously, and there's a rumour going around that Phil has found something. We can get in, can we? What is it then?
OK, well, let me put you in the picture, and you, Tony, as well. This is our enclosure ditch.
Yeah.
With one side coming along there, and the other side you're coming along there, OK? And that comes up to our trackway, which is running off
this
there
here?
on that side. On this side, here's the other side of the trackway.
Not coming right through.
That's right, you can see that.
Yeah.
And look what it's got on the outside of it. A nice parallel flanking ditch.
Yep.
So that is what we were seeing on the geophysics.
Yeah.
But the real important thing is this here. This thing here, this is where you get the rumour about the Saxon, and it's no rumour, it's stuffed chock-a-block with Saxon pottery.
Right.
And look at the end here, nice big post hole, slap bang in the middle of our section. Got to be a Saxon grouping house.
So it's one of these sunken floored buildings?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
A watting
That's
house?
rubbish on the floor.
What's this house?
type
It's a
of
very
Saxon
characteristic
building.
house. It has a rectangular pit dug into the ground with a post at each end.
Yep.
And you can either imagine it as a substantial building with a floor with a cellar under it, or as a building you step down into with a workshop or something in it.
Hang on a minute. We started out looking for Bronze Age or Iron Age.
Yeah.
But this Saxon dwelling, I mean, Saxon, that's a few hundred years after the end of the Iron Age, isn't
That's
it?
right, yeah. But that's okay. I mean, we're in a landscape that's used at different periods.
So we have found our trackway, and we can show what this area would have looked like. This house was built in Saxon times. Unfortunately, we don't have time today to excavate a Saxon house, but we're pretty sure from other sites that the trackway has been in use since the Bronze Age. So we close down this trench and record it. This is the story of a road, isn't it, this field?
Yeah, it is really, because that road probably was there by the late Bronze Age. It was in use in the Iron Age, in the Roman period, in the Anglo-Saxon period. It probably went out of use when they laid the new fields out. So it's probably in use for 2,500 years, something like that.
And what about up here tomorrow?
Oh, well, that's a whole new ball game, because we're trying a different technique there, and I just hope it pays off. It may or may not.
I hope it does. It's 15 diggers, an enormous hole, and we don't know if it's going to work or not.
Not yet.
Keep your fingers crossed for us. Join us after the break. Evening.
Right, well, this is trench 2, in case you
Day
couldn't
2
hear.
opens in Trench 2, in the main field over the crop marks. It's stuffed full of round features and ditches, and Carenza is excited by it.
Right.
Can you see at the edge here there's a curving, you see that dark band, there's the stones in it, there's lumps of stone up there, sitting in this dark feature that's curving round like this. Asked Greg. and then back into the bulk there. We're wondering if that might be something to do with a hut. But our most interesting thing at the moment is just in here. You see that darker patch there surrounded by this orange soil? This is a post hole, and this is our best evidence yet for a building, really.
Yeah.
Now, to me, that doesn't look particularly good evidence. What can you see there? I can vaguely see a circle, but that's about it.
Well, what you're seeing is the ghost of where a post has stood in the past. You have to remember that most buildings in the past were built of timber, and the easiest way to build a timber building is to dig a hole, put a timber in, then backfill it round, pack it round either with stones or soil or clay, and that will hold your building up. What happens, of course, when the post rots or is burnt or taken away is you just get the stain of where it was. So I said to you before, you know, British archaeology has made up lots of stains in the soil, really. But because they were timber buildings, we're always looking for the holes where the post stood. And that's good indication that we've got a building here somewhere.
Are there likely to be any more posts around it? Can we chase the rest of the hut?
Well, yeah, there probably will be. The problem with chasing it is that we don't know what shape it is. It's not like a sort of line, you know, a linear feature that you can see what direction.
Drawing coming up.
If you think your classic circular post-hole structure, you've got one in the middle holding the roof up and a load around the edge that are the walls. Now, we don't know whether our post hole is that one, in which case we could go in any direction, whether it's that one, in which case it's curving that way, whether it's that one. So basically we've no idea which way to go.
So what will we do then in this trench?
Well, basically what we're going to do is, because that curving feature is going into the bulk that way, the edge of the trench that way, there's a little linear feature here that's also going that way. We're going to extend the trench in that direction and just hope that we may pick up some more post holes. I mean, we may be unlucky and they may all go that way. That's our best bet. It's just to make the trench wider, and hopefully we'll be able to understand some of these features and see how they carry on.
Over in our big trench, we're making good progress. Phil has an army of people hoeing. It's now looking seriously big, but it's still not quite long enough yet. In our search for Iron and Bronze Age dates, we've brought in a couple of environmental experts. They're taking tiny fragments of material, which we'll analyse.
Say you've got a pit, you want to know what was that pit used for, what were they throwing into it? And quite often it is the waste from their dinners, or it's the waste from some farming process. And what I do is put a soil sample from a pit, for instance, break it all up so that I release all those small things that people can't see very easily, and wash it over, it all floats, wash it over onto the sieve.
Is this what I fear it might be?
Probably not. What's in there is plant matter and hopefully some cereal grains, that's what I'm looking for.
Cereal might mean Iron Age, so this is important. The field walkers are now sorting out what they've found.
And some burnt, looks slightly burnt flint as well.
They've got quite a lot of flint, which is pre-Bronze Age and even Roman stuff. So we have more evidence that this area was settled for a couple of thousand years. But it isn't specific enough, so we move on. In the incident room, Stuart has come up with a picture of the whole area across the last 4,000 years.
This is where we are working and excavating. And if you look at these black lines here, these are a series of crop-marked trackways and linear features. If you look at, take that, that's a scruffy map, and look, those are those trackways marked here in relation to the area we've got. And you look in the landscape, the main field pattern is that way. Our crop marks are going that way. There are these other features on the map which are also part of that. They look odd, don't they, Mick?
They do. They're out of place in a north-south set of alignments, aren't they?
They've got an axis which is like that.
So what does that mean?
Well, what it means, if you go to the next slide here, if you look at where the medieval and Saxon settlements are, Kensham, Kemerton, Overbury, can you see they're on this same line? Yeah. And this, to me, I mean, this is really exciting. It's far more fun than digging holes. We've got, in the present landscape, the layout of the villages is, in effect, a replication of boundaries that were laid out 3,000 years ago.
Or a continuity, of course.
A continuity.
Mick, there's part of me that's thinking this is a great story, very exciting, but it's just a theory. It might have about as much value as ley lines. Is there any indication in our archaeology that there might be any reality?
Yeah, I think there is, because down at the sewage farm area we can actually see the change in alignment from that previous alignment in the prehistoric period through to something that's more north-south in the Saxon and medieval periods. And in fact, you know, Stuart gets excited about his maps and so on, but the key piece of evidence came from that hole with that Saxon hut in the bottom of it. So you have to have the archaeology as well to back up all the interesting ideas about the landscape.
So it's true, but we actually needed both of you in order to ascertain its veracity.
But that's always the case.
This is all part of a picture of human activity here over many centuries that we're now building up. But in Trench 2, Carenza is getting specific results. She's dug out a ditch which amazingly cuts the post hole she found. This means that the post hole was there before the ditch was dug. Inside the ditch, there's a piece of pot.
What we really want to do, of course, is date the ditch, because that will help us date the post hole. All the other bits of the trench seem to be coming up with Roman pottery, but the pottery up here is much rougher. I don't know whether it's Saxon or Iron Age. Would you be able to give an opinion from that? It's a nice rim shirt there.
Well, I think from this rim form, it's actually a classic piece of Iron Age pottery.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty certain, yeah.
So that's really, really interesting, actually, because if that ditch is cutting that post hole and the ditch is Iron Age, then it's possible that these post holes
could be
might be Bronze Age.
We're incredibly lucky finding this relationship within a
Isn't
narrow
it? Yeah,
trench.
I mean, one post hole, it happens to be cut by
excellent.
a ditch, and a ditch we can date. It's I'm staggered.
We may actually have something Bronze Age in our sights. This post hole may be part of a Bronze Age house. We widen the trench even further. Mick, what have you done? This looks like the Somme.
Well, it's the big trench we talked about, but this is actually only half the area that we talked about. But we thought we'd start with this to see what we'd got and how easy it was to dig. I suppose I'm being a bit cautious about it because it's a lot of commitment to time and people. And if we can get the answers out of this area, which it looks okay at the moment, then we'll probably stick with this. But we could double the size of it.
Although this is only half the area we'd planned, this trench goes over quite a few features.
At this end of the trench is where the curvy features, the curvy ditches. That's the ones, the ones that showed on the photograph. We've got them coming in here. Look.
Now, can I get into your trench?
No, I'd rather you didn't.
Well, can you show me where? Because I can't see.
Okay,
very much,
okay. I will, and I will show you. This you can see is dirt. Brown dirt, darker stuff. Yeah. And then look at this here, this yellowy orange gravel. That's the natural. And you've got the orangey natural there again on that side.
Yeah.
And then as you come back here, you go from orangey natural back into another ditch. You can see the ditch now, can you?
Yeah.
Again, dark soil. Back we come up the other side, orangey gravel. Now, down we go again into the big square enclosure ditch that we got on the photograph, which shows on the geophysics.
Which is massive, isn't it?
We're getting pottery out of it. Middle Iron Age, out the top of it. We got an enormous complex of pits. There's a beauty over there, look, do you see it? That's a rubbish pit, but post holes.
So is that likely to be a building?
Well, it's one post of a building, presumably.
Yeah,
isn't it?
or a fence or whatever. I mean,
if
if we can get a pattern of them and demonstrate what's happening. Yeah. I mean, you don't put buildings out where you put rubbish pits.
No, so you probably got the houses over here.
So you've got the buildings
and
inside and the rubbish pits outside.
This is our best evidence yet for a settlement. The houses would have been in here. Outside, along the ditch, the people who lived here kept their rubbish in pits. From the pottery, it looks like it's Iron Age. This trench is now as big as we need, so we simply decide to continue digging inside it.
So you're going to help us make a Bronze Age plough then?
Yes.
An ard, actually, they're called, because they don't turn the soil over, they just go through the ground and tickle it up a bit to prepare the seed
That's
bed.
right.
I think we want something like
We're being
that,
helped out this
something
week
like
by
this
these
one
local
here,
school
which is-
children.
it's got the main
We're going to
thing
try to make one of these, a Bronze Age
bit
plough
goes
or
into the
ard.
soil. So if we can make something like that, we think we can get either a cow or a bull to pull it for us. There aren't many animals that know how to do this now because, we use tractors such a lot.
You ready?
Okay,
Yeah.
off you go then.
Let's go.
Jolly good.
Their first job is to find a suitable piece of wood.
Okay, so you all know what we're looking for?
Yeah.
A tree that, it will start from the bottom, probably curving, and then up. So we want a nice curve to it, okay? So spread out, let's find a tree, shall we? Yeah.
Once we've got the right tree, poor Simon here has to chop it down. While the others hunt for materials suitable for binding the pieces of the plough together. Meanwhile, geophysics are looking at a new area. They're examining this small circle in the field next to our main site. It looks odd just set off to one side like this, so we'll run their equipment across it to see if it throws anything up.
It's all getting cleaned up now, so the ditches are showing up a lot better. This is the main one. Look, they're getting the edge of that quite clear now. And all these features that people are looking at down here, look at the half section through the various pits, is all the occupation area inside that.
Are you pretty sure that that means that there was a settlement inside it?
Yeah, and I think all this evidence here that's producing, animal bone, which is in effect the remains of, meat meals that people have, chopped the bones up and so on, plus the domestic pottery that's all broken, shows that we're in some sort of settlement, living area, and the various post holes and pits are what you'd expect from the buildings and the various domestic processes that are going on there.
This is looking more and more like a large settlement, and at the moment, it's also looking very Iron Age. What do you think of Mick's open cast mine?
Well, it's been a cracking 2 days, and I really think to be able to understand a site like this, you do need to excavate on a large scale. So much of our work today is on a small scale, tied to developments, and it's really great to be able to...
Particularly on a gravel site with crop marks, you need a big area to understand what all the features mean, don't you?
That's right, it's not just the features that enclose the...
Go on, who's buying the beers?
Oh, right.
2 pints of bitter.
2 pints of bitter,
Yeah, Louis already got his.
Presumably you won't show us till you've had your beer.
Quite right. Yeah, Chris. In fact, I think we ought to ask for 2.
Why, come on.
What we've been doing is, so this is the main crop mark enclosure that we've been looking at. We've been concentrating on a field to the west, this small crop mark enclosure. And as I said, this is where geophysics doesn't work.
Oh, look at that.
Oh.
So it's really nice. This is about a 20-metre square, a really
20
strong
metre cross.
anomaly, a nice entrance and a series of pits inside. Ignore this is just a water pipe.
And this is the area where we had finds from the field walking, so we're quite possibly looking at a previously unknown Bronze Age site in this area.
So, your first look at that, what do you think it might be?
I thought it was a little Iron Age farmstead or something like that. Or Bronze Age, in fact, yeah. But I mean, obviously tomorrow what we should do is put a trench probably across the entrance or somewhere to see what date it is.
Hang on, we've dug up half of Worcestershire already.
Yeah, but
have we really got time?
We've been going through the list of what we've got and what we've got to do and what labour we've got, and we think we could tackle another one.
That would be good, wouldn't it?
Let's go for it. Yeah. Well, we can sort out exactly where and how big and all the rest of it, can't we? Yeah.
Well,
with the beer.
Talking of having a cracking day, can you just hold this for me?
Oh!
Down to the serious stuff now.
Mick the Nut Crusher Aston.
Right, are you ready?
Concrete you've got there, Vic.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's cracked.
No, it's not, it's perfectly all right. Get off.
Been baking them in an oven, haven't you?
Ooh. Oh.
That's St John's looking at between.
Join us after the break. Dawn, day 3, and there's drama. Francis Pryor has seen the geophysics results and can't wait. He's up early and raring to go, while the rest of us are still struggling out of bed. By the time Phil catches up, he's well on with it.
This is still too early for me, you know.
You're such a grouch in the morning, aren't you?
Yeah. Francis, is nearly dark.
It was lovely first thing.
Oh. What have you got?
Oh, we got loads of stuff here. We've got, well look, have a look at this. We got this enclosure here, and there we have the end of the ditch. It's sort of got wider. I don't know, it's a sort of pit. And just to the right of where Phil's digging, you can see that grey patch, and that's it.
That's it.
You know,
and any indication of date so far?
We've got some very soft pottery.
Right.
Okay, don't drop it.
Well, that's real grot stuff, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, you may think so. I'd rather like it.
Now, if it's grotty, does that tend to mean that it's Iron Age or just rather badly made?
A lot of it's all grotty at that later prehistoric period, isn't it? So I think that's pretty undiagnostic at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't like to say exactly what it is.
So we've got to get a bit more, really.
It's not Roman,
Yeah.
I'll say that for a fact. There's loads and loads of stuff to get on with, and if you don't mind, I'll probably do it on my own. So
OK.
Oh, all right then.
Go and have a coffee.
Mick and I head across to Trench 1. This trench is turning out to be a little gold mine. At last the finds there are giving us some dating evidence. And it's Iron Age.
It's actually getting really interesting now. We've got this great collection of material out of this one little hole. And this is really a good cross-section of Iron Age life, isn't it, Malcolm, now?
Well, it is. I mean, I'm actually standing in the fill of a whole series of gullies that are outside the main enclosure. And here we've got a good assemblage of normal, everyday domestic rubbish.
You wouldn't believe that looking at it now, would you?
What can you see there?
Here, for instance, we've got a couple of pieces of Iron Age pottery, and you can see here the light staining. That's lime scale. So we've got an Iron Age pot where people have been boiling liquid.
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. We've got animal bone from the food that they were eating. Got larger chunks of pottery from large storage vessels.
What's this manky old brick-looking substance?
It's probably an oven in a house, and there's a bit here that looks as if it's actually got a hole through, maybe through the floor or something like that. And then this stuff, that you get a lot of that in Worcestershire, don't you?
Well, this is called briquetage, and these were large, chunky vessels that were used to contain the brine, and the salt was evaporated out. And then when you actually wanted to get at the salt, you smashed open the container. And that's why we find so many fragments. And they're scattered over something like 80 miles.
Other broken things here, look. This is just a broken pebble, but it's a pot boiler. Again, you know, you haven't got an electric kettle, so you put your water on your fire in a pot and you keep dropping hot stones into it and it gradually heats up. Heats up very, very quickly, but of course eventually the pebbles break up. So you've got a little microcosm really of a sort of Iron Age kitchen here. You know, I think that's really nice. That you know, you can see the stuff on the fire. You've got the oven. You've got the animal bones of what they're eating. You've got the salt coming in. You've got the water being boiled. You've got the stains on the pot, and you've got the pot boilers where they're trying to heat the water up. So it might look like a scruffy little ditch, but you know, it's a little bit of Iron Age life.
Back in the incident room, our environmentalists are also coming up with results. David has analysed his phosphate readings. These samples show that both humans and animals lived here, but more importantly, they suggest that they didn't really venture outside the limits of this large enclosure ditch. So, was this a farm? Meanwhile, Liz has looked into the grains she found. The people who lived here were growing a form of wheat called emmer. This might suggest they were Bronze Age. Mick is itching to get his hands on the plough.
So will it fly yet?
Well, not with your weight, Mick, no.
But it looks as if it'll go together, though.
Almost. Well, it will go together. There's just a bit more work to do to it.
Can we try putting it together?
Yep.
This is the...
That goes in the front.
Which way up does it go?
That goes
like
that way round, but at the back.
Right.
That's it. Should do anyway.
Yes, that's it. Right. Oh, no, that's interesting. So that actually rubs on the ground as it goes along.
And you want to try it out?
Yeah, go on then.
Oh, that's it.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, they're stuck.
I think if it was pegged together, it's
Yeah,
a
it's not
go guy,
wedged
wouldn't
yet,
it?
and
Yeah, and especially if it was in soil rather than grass.
yes.
Hey, that's cracking, isn't it?
So it's working, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'm
That's
pleased with
brilliant,
this.
that is. I think we need to be able to alter the angle of the share as well, don't we?
Yes, well, once we put some wedges in,
Yeah,
we'll be able to
yeah.
change that.
Now we just have to make the bindings to hold the plough together and we'll be ready to go. That's a job for this eager bunch. Back at Phil's new trench, he's come across a rather large stone.
He's out. God. Well, still can't be sure.
Is that smooth?
It's going to what? Well, it is smooth. You see, it's a beautiful curve.
Definitely looks like a saddle quern.
Eh?
Yeah. Saddle quern.
Well, that's what we want to
think
see.
you're right.
I mean, I'd like to see it washed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
We've got some water there. Swill it off. Yeah, go on. Oh, that is nice and smooth.
Yeah. It's got to
It
be.
is, isn't it?
It's got to be.
Look at that. Makes all the difference, doesn't it, eh? God, that's smooth as a baby's behind, that is, isn't it? Look at that.
Okay. Yeah. We're really looking at Iron Age.
But
Sort
you
of
know, the Iron Age goes on for several hundred years. Surely you can be
Yeah.
more precise than that.
Right, it'll be a little bit more precise than that. Yeah, we could suggest it's probably, say, about 5th century through to about 2nd century BC. Yeah.
There speaks a local expert. I believe you. If you don't
Thank
know.
you very much. Yeah.
Carenza, have you found that house yet?
Yes, yep.
A trench has grown a lot since yesterday.
Well, we had to do that to find the house.
Yeah. Where are we then?
You're right in the middle of it.
Oh. Well, you better show us where the outside is.
Come in carefully.
Presumably over that corner. That's the start.
Yes, well,
of it.
you remember we had yesterday when you were here, we had one post hole
Yep.
here, and we had that conversation about post holes. Well, in fact, it doesn't look as if the post hole is anything to do with the house we found. The house we found is actually marked by this shallow ditch here, which starts off here and then goes right round here, all the way around here in the trench, straightens up a bit here, carries on round, then goes right out round here,
Yeah.
right out round here, right round here, then reappears in the trench. Yeah.
I think it's too big for me to afford it.
And
That's good, isn't it?
comes round, finishes about here.
So
This
we
is
are
the front door.
we are about in the middle then.
Yes, you are. The half, if that was in the middle, would have been more or less exactly just behind you.
Behind me, yeah. So
And
that's
it's
a sizable.
big. It's
yeah.
huge. It's 10 metres across. The ditch is actually the drip gully where the rain running off the eaves would have gone. Yeah.
And what
so-
sort of date do you reckon it is then?
Well, the pottery we've had coming out of that drip gully has been consistently late Iron Age, that Malvern ware. So we're very confident about the date.
Right.
So it's late Iron Age.
It's a big house, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Is this a standard size for a house in those days, or is this a high status house?
They're terrifically variable, from little tiny things to huge, great things, 50 odd feet across. I'd have said this was getting on
Perfectly
to
average.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we set Victor to work. It does seem that we're tying this area down to the Iron Age. So he sets about drawing an Iron Age house for us.
Right, so I don't have to pull it then.
No, you don't. We
That-
found some wonderful oxen to pull it.
Yeah.
What are they?
They're longhorn oxen, English longhorn oxen.
Have they got names?
Yeah, they're Reeves and Mortimer.
That's a bit ominous, isn't it?
So-
Is this plough actually what like one would have looked in the Iron Age?
Yeah, I was looking at it closely. It puts me in mind of those ones from the Danish bogs.
Yeah.
It's absolutely spot on. Yeah, I like it a lot.
Yeah, that's what we modelled it on.
I hope it works.
Yeah, so do I.
Fingers
Okay,
crossed.
are you ready?
Absolutely.
Push in hard and
Okay, then.
1, 2, 3.
Walk on then, boys.
Oh yes!
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Needs a bit more weight on it, doesn't it? Or
Walk on, walk on.
you have a
Yeah,
go.
shall I
You have a
take
go,
over?
guy, because I think it needs a
Let me
bit
go.
of...
Stick to give it a bit of goad.
Yeah, there we are.
Walk on then.
Come on, Mortimer.
Oh yes, that's better, isn't it?
Come on, Mortimer.
I'm taking a few of those baby turnips up too.
Yeah. Let's have a go, guy.
Yeah,
You've got to
of
keep it up
course.
in the air like that.
Yes, pushing it forward.
Oh, look at that. Look, straight back into the Iron Age. It's not hugely strenuous, is it?
No, it's not too bad.
There we go.
Bit
Yeah.
difficult keeping it straight,
Lift
isn't it?
Lift
Right,
it up or
straight.
push, really.
Come on, Mortimer.
Oh, it's not my fault, it's Vic and Bob. What do you do if you want to turn a corner?
You drop it down, drop the handle down.
Oh, onto the back
so
bit
the
here.
ploughshare actually lifts up and it goes on the butt.
Whoa, it's going fast now.
Look as if you're on a motorbike.
Francis, you want to go?
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, I'll have the stick.
Got it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Excellent.
Ah, proper fen furrow. Come on. Get it in. Woo. If you want to do a decent furrow, you've got to push it.
Well, yes, that's you are, isn't it?
You
Lean
do,
on it,
actually.
in fact, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God, stop, I'm dropping. Oh.
Very good. Very good.
I've had enough of all this running around, so I go back to Carenza's place for a rest. Oh, thank you for inviting us into your home.
It's lovely to see you.
What do you think of it?
I love this place. The most important thing, in the Iron Age, just like today, life revolved, and in a roundhouse, it does revolve around a central fire. It revolves around your stomach, right? So in the middle is the fire. That keeps you warm, but it also cooks your food. The smoke goes up and out through the roof. No chimney, you'll notice. If you had a chimney, the fire would go whoomp like that, and the whole house would burn down. That's happened in experiments, unfortunate ones. The thing about this house is that it looks out into the farm, right? This front door is very carefully placed. You sit here, you can look out, and there you can see the sheep and the cattle. They're out in the farmyard, and they're right on our line of sight. So if you sit here, you're sitting with your back to the fire, you're looking out, you're keeping an eye on your livestock, you can see your kids playing out in the yard. This is very carefully thought out. This doorway isn't put any old way. And the other thing about this doorway is it faces out onto the Malvern Hills and the setting sun. And as the sun goes down, you say goodnight to your ancestors, because they're with you. They're with you all the time.
Our site is now taking some shape. We have a trackway which may have started in the Bronze Age. We know it was still there in Saxon times. In our main field, we know that there was an Iron Age house here, probably a farm. Next to it, there was a larger settlement. We can date it to the Iron Age, but can we take it back any earlier? Back at Trench 1, Malcolm has managed to move things on a stage further.
And look at those.
Oh, crikey, look at that. Well, I know what that is. I mean, that's a nice flint scraper. But what's this?
Well, that's a piece of beaker pottery.
Get out.
So that goes back to 2000 BC.
Yeah, I wouldn't recognise that at all.
So this is the earliest pottery we've had from the site.
Crikey, so there's something early Bronze Age on the site, I mean, but...
That's right, and then we've got a gap of about 1,500 years before we go on to the,
Right.
to the Iron Age site.
This piece of pot shows us that there were people on this site in the very early Bronze Age, around 2000 BC. But the finds suggest that this area is predominantly Iron Age, probably under the protection of the nearby hill fort. And in the field next door, we can take the story a stage further, as Mick and I discover as we head across to Phil's Trench, which casts new light on the social complexity of this site. 3 days ago, we said we'd try and find out whether these fields were associated with the Bronze Age settlement over there,
Yeah.
or the Iron Age hill site over there.
Yeah.
So which is it?
Well, it's both, isn't it? And a lot more than that, because we've not only got Bronze Age stuff, we've now got Iron Age stuff, we've got Roman stuff, we've got Saxon stuff, and of course, in the last couple of hours, we found this early Bronze Age stuff, which takes us back to about 2000 BC, about 4,000 years ago. So I think what we're actually looking at is one community that's moved around the landscape on different settlements and farming the countryside around, which is a fantastic story.
Phil, how about over here? What have we got?
Oh, we've had a ball today, Tony. I mean, you remember this wonderful geophysics plot that we had of the enclosure. Well, this morning we put in a trench across the terminus. Now, incredibly, in this terminus, we've had an incredible amount of domestic refuse. People throwing their rubbish into the ditch. I mean, look, they're obviously eating off the fat of the land.
Cut marks.
Beautifully cut marks on the bone. Look what they're eating. Here's they're grinding their own corn.
Is that nice and smooth?
Oh,
Yeah,
you know,
nice, yeah.
we've got incredibly high status imported pottery, but
Look at this. Francis is gripping this like that.
This is a star of the show. A little scrap of metal. It went round the outside of a shield. And shields don't grow on trees.
No.
Yeah? You have pots in your houses. If you're very, very rich and swanky, you're one of the top men. And what do you have? You have a shield. It's a symbol of status and power. And here's their house. This is where they are, on the outside of the village, looking in, too rich and powerful to be living with the ordinary people.
Yeah, that's like a lot of other sites, isn't it? Where, like the one on Dartmoor, for example, at Kestor, you've got a similar sort of arrangement there.
So good 3 days?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Brilliant, eh? What? It's funny, all these little finds give you an inkling of what life must have been like in the Iron Age. But the thing I remember most was hurtling around that field with those 2 oxen and that plough. It was at that moment that I really began to understand a little bit of what it must have been like to be an Iron Age farmer.